Iran, a harder nuclear question. Two quotations again. Vice President Dick Cheney, quote, "We will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon," close quote. Retired Army General John Abizaid, quote, "There are ways to live with a nuclear Iran. Let's face it, we've lived with a nuclear Soviet Union, we've lived with a nuclear China, and we're living with other nuclear powers as well," close quote. Whose side is Henry Kissinger on?
Well, I don't agree with the Abizaid statement for this reason. It was one thing to live with the Soviet Union that had calculations very similar to ours, because they were quite an advanced country, and because it was only a two-power equation. When you have 10 countries, each making their own calculations, many of which in conflict with each other for causes that are not necessarily global, this produces a risk of nuclear war that, in my view, is intolerable. And it now so happens that Iran is at the cutting edge of this issue, because if they get nuclear weapons, then a whole group of other countries are also going to get nuclear weapons. So it isn't of whether we can live with Iran. If Iran were the only nuclear country, if it replaced the Soviet Union, certainly we could deter them. But it still doesn't take care of another problem, namely they are using a nuclear capability as a kind of umbrella over non-nuclear activities to deter us from intervening with their non-nuclear imperialism.
Well, is it the logic of that argument, then, that absent adequate cooperation with our European allies, and I think I'd be willing to suggest that that cooperation has been pretty spotty as regards Iran, it's up to the United States simply to refuse, by military action if necessary, to permit Iran to attain nuclear weapons or nuclear capability? Is that the logic of the argument?
Oh, the logic of the argument is certainly that we will reach a point yet to be agreed on, at which one has to come to two conclusions. One, that Iran is clearly going ahead to build a capability that must lead to a nuclear capability. And secondly, that the present methods are not succeeding. Does one then decide to go into a blockade of Iran or a real global sanctions or other steps? I would prefer to leave that until we are closer to that moment. But we have to face the fact that such a moment will be coming.